Anabel had always been different. While others saw a blank sheet, she saw possibilities. Her small studio apartment in Lekki was filled with color. Unfinished portraits, half-empty paint jars, and charcoal sketches lying on every surface. But among all of her works, one particular portrait stood out. It was of a young man, tall, handsome, with deep brown eyes that seemed to follow you wherever you stood. His smile was soft but mysterious, and there was something almost alive about him. She had drawn him one evening when her emotions were all over the place, lonely, tired, and craving connection. If only someone like this existed, she had whispered as she signed her name at the bottom. Every night before bed, she would stare at that portrait hanging beside her bed. It had become part of her life. Her friend, Tonya, often teased her about it. Tonya laughed one Saturday as she sat cross-legged on Annabel's couch.
Anabel, this your imaginary boyfriend don't they reach another level, oh? You even framed this picture in the living room. Babe, you need deliverance. Leave my Prince Charming alone, Jerry. He's perfect. No heartbreak, no lies, no stress. I love him just like that. Tonya rolled her eyes. You're too funny. Imagine if one day he just walked into this house. If he ever does, Tonya, then maybe I was never just imagining him.
Anabel smiled faintly and said something that would later haunt her. Weeks passed and Annabel's career blossomed. She was becoming one of the most sought-after female artists in Lagos. Celebrities and art collectors wanted her work. Yet every time she finished a project, she returned home to that same face, the man on the canvas. Sometimes, she'd wake up at night thinking she heard movement in the room. But when she switched on the light, everything was still. The air would feel heavy, like someone had just exhaled beside her bed. She'd laugh it off and tell herself she was overthinking. But deep down, something in her heart whispered that the portrait was more than just paint. Then one evening, something strange happened. As she was locking up her studio, a soft wind blew across the room even though the windows were closed. The lights flickered twice. Anabel froze. Her eyes moved toward the portrait. For a split second, she thought she saw the man blink. Her heart raced. She rubbed her eyes and looked again. Still. The same calm expression. The same mysterious smile. "I must be going crazy," she whispered, forcing a laugh. But when she turned to leave, she heard a faint voice, deep and gentle, call her name.
Anabel.
The brush in her hand fell to the floor. She turned sharply. The room was empty, but the portrait seemed to glow faintly in the dim light. She stood frozen for almost a full minute before slowly backing away, locking the door, and running into her bedroom. Her mind couldn't explain it, but something had changed that night. The painting she had once made for fun was beginning to come alive, and she didn't know that her life would never be the same again. Anabel couldn't sleep that night. She tossed and turned, trying to convince herself she had only imagined the voice. "It's just stress," she muttered, hugging her pillow tightly. But every time she closed her eyes, she saw the man's face from the portrait. The same calm eyes, the same soft smile, almost like he was calling her again. At some point, she sat up abruptly, turned on the bedside lamp, and faced the wall where the portrait hung. "I'm not afraid of you," she whispered nervously. "You're just paint and canvas, that's all." But deep down, she wasn't sure anymore. Morning came and Tonya showed up as usual, bringing her favorite snacks, Puff Puff and Zobel. She found Anabel staring blankly at the portrait. "Babe, you never bathe," Tonya joked. "You don't stare at that picture like you won't enter inside." Anabel forced a laugh. "Tonya, something weird happened yesterday." Tonya raised an eyebrow. Weird how? Annabelle hesitated. I heard a voice, my name, from this direction. She pointed toward the painting. Tonia's laughter filled the room. I beg, stop that horror story, Jerry. Maybe na neighbor they call their own Annabelle. No, Tonya. It came from inside. This room. From him. Her friend stopped laughing and looked at her closely. Annabelle, have you been sleeping well? Not really, I admitted, but I'm telling you the truth. To lighten the mood, Tonya teased again. Maybe he finally wants to say hi. You know, you've been calling him your Prince Charming for too long. Annabelle rolled her eyes. You'll never take me seriously. Tonya smiled. I will when your painting starts replying text messages. They both laughed, but it was forced. Deep down, Tonya felt something strange about that painting. She had always found its eyes too real, as if the man behind them could see straight into her soul. She stayed only a few minutes longer before leaving. Please rest, Annabelle. No late-night painting today. You need sleep. That night, Annabelle obeyed. She turned off her lights early and tried to rest, but around 2 a.m., she heard it again.
Annabelle.
Her heart skipped. She sat up slowly, her eyes darting to the painting. The voice was clearer this time, deep, calm, and familiar.
Don't be afraid.
It said. Her breathing quickened. Who are you? She whispered. There was silence. Then, you made me. She froze, trembling. What? You drew me. The voice continued, now softer. You gave me a face, a name, and a heart. I didn't give you a name, she said in panic. You called me your Prince Charming, the voice replied gently, and so I became him. Annabelle's entire body shook. She wanted to scream, but couldn't. The painting began to shimmer slightly, like the colors were melting. His eyes blinked again, this time unmistakably. Annabelle gasped, stumbling backward. The man on the canvas smiled faintly. Don't fear me, Annabelle. I'm here because you wished for me. Her knees went weak. For years, she had longed for a perfect man, one who would understand her, love her, and never hurt her. But she never imagined that wish could take form. That night, she sat trembling on the floor, staring at the portrait that was no longer just a piece of art. It was alive, and it knew her name. For the next few nights, Annabelle barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she felt his presence. The man in the portrait, the one she had drawn with her own hands, now spoke to her in whispers. His voice was calm, deep, and strangely comforting. Sometimes he would call her name softly. Other times, he would tell her not to be afraid. It got to the point where she began to talk back. One night, she sat on her bed, facing the painting. The room was dimly lit by a small bedside lamp, and the air felt thick. Who are you really? She asked in a shaky voice. I told you, the voice said, almost like a sigh. You made me. But how is that possible? She pressed. You're a drawing, just lines and color. There was silence for a moment. Then he replied, when you drew me, you gave me more than color. You gave me life, with your longing, your imagination, your heart. Annabelle frowned. This can't be real. Real, he said softly, is what you believe. She didn't know whether to scream, cry, or laugh. It was impossible, yet she couldn't deny what she was hearing. She touched the frame gently and whispered, What's your name? Call me whatever your heart desires, he replied. She thought for a moment, then smiled nervously. All right, I'll call you Ethan. Ethan, the voice repeated, as though savoring it. then Ethan I shall be. Days turned into weeks, and what started as fear began to feel normal. She would come home from work and talk to him. Sometimes she'd tell him about her day, her customers, her frustrations, even her loneliness. He would listen patiently and even gave advice where necessary. "You're the only one who understands me, Ethan," she once said softly. "I was made for that," Ethan replied gently. But strange things began to happen around her apartment. The mirror in her bathroom fogged up on its own, revealing words like, "You're not alone." Her bedroom door sometimes opened slightly at night, even when she locked it. And once, she woke up to find a single rose placed beside her pillow, fresh, real, and dripping with dew. She stared at it in disbelief. The next evening, she confronted him again. "Ethan, did you do that?" "Do what?" his voice asked. "The rose on my bed." "I wanted to see you smile," he said calmly. Anabel gasped. "But how? You're inside a painting." There was a pause. Then, for the first time, she saw it. A faint movement. Ethan's hand brushed against the edge of the frame, like something trying to cross over. She stumbled backward. No, this isn't right." "Don't run from me, Anabel," he pleaded softly. Tears filled her eyes. She didn't know if she was losing her mind or living inside a miracle. But one thing was certain. The man she'd drawn was no longer just a dream. He wanted more than her attention. He wanted her. Anabel could no longer tell if she was awake or dreaming. Every day felt unreal. She would hear Ethan's voice, see his faint movements in the portrait, and smell his scent in the air, like wet paint mixed with sandalwood. Sometimes she would even feel a gentle brush against her skin, as if an invisible hand touched her. It scared her, yet she couldn't deny the comfort it brought. He was everything she had ever wanted, attentive, kind, and loving. But he wasn't human. One evening, as the rain poured heavily outside, Anabel sat quietly painting another portrait. She tried to focus on her work, but her thoughts kept drifting toward Ethan. "You've been quiet," she said softly, glancing at the painting beside her bed. "I'm here," he replied, his voice calm as ever. "Why can't you just come out? Why can't I see you for real?" she whispered. There was silence. Then he said something that made her heart race. "Because you never finished me." Anabel froze. "What do you mean?" "When you drew me, you stopped at my hands. You never completed them." Her heart pounded. She got up and stared closely at the portrait. He was right. His hands were slightly faded, the edges incomplete. "If you finish me, I can be with you fully." She stepped back, trembling. "Ethan, that's impossible." "Do you not want me?" His voice sounded hurt. "It's not that, it's just, this isn't normal. You're not supposed to exist. I exist because of your heart. Finish what you started, Anabel." That night, she couldn't stop thinking about his words. Against her better judgment, she took her brush and mixed her paints. "Just a few strokes," she whispered. As she painted, she felt her heart beat faster. With every line she added, the room temperature dropped. Her lights flickered, and the sound of the rain outside grew louder. She finished the final stroke on his hands and stepped back. "Done," she said softly. Then everything went silent. Suddenly, she noticed something strange, a faint red drop on the canvas. She blinked, leaning closer. Another drop, then another. Her eyes widened as she realized what it was. Blood. The painting was bleeding. She screamed and stumbled backward, her brush falling to the ground. The drops formed a thin stream that slid down the canvas and dripped onto the floor. The lights flickered again, and the air grew heavier. "Ethan!" she cried out, her voice trembling. "What's happening?" The portrait shimmered violently, and for a split second she saw his hand move again, this time pushing against the edge of the frame as if trying to break through. "Anabel," he whispered, "you've finished me." She ran toward the door, terrified, but the door slammed shut on its own. Her breath came out in sharp gasps. "Don't be afraid," Ethan said softly, though his tone sounded different now, deeper, almost possessive. "You gave me life, and now I belong to you." Anabel sank to the floor, trembling, staring at the bleeding painting that now seemed alive, pulsing faintly like a heartbeat. She realized with horror that her fantasy had crossed a line. The man she had created was no longer just a dream. He was real, and she didn't know if he came from love or something much darker.